The council chamber stretched wide enough to fit 3 cargo ships side by side. 12 different species sat in their assigned places, each seat carved from materials native to their homeworlds. Heron adjusted his feathers and watched the debate continue for the 5th hour. His people, the Avanth, were known for their patience. Even he was getting tired. "The fringe territories are collapsing," said Council Member Orcs, her scales reflecting the chamber lights. "We must act." "Under which jurisdiction?" another member asked. "The fringe rejected council authority 30 years ago." "People are dying," Orcs insisted. "Then they should have remained under council protection." Heron had heard these arguments before. Different crisis, same circular debate. He glanced at the empty seat 3 rows down. Earth's seat. It had been empty for 200 years. He remembered first contact like it happened yesterday. The human ships appeared near the trade routes, curious and careful. The council welcomed them, offered them membership, a seat at the table. Most species jumped at the chance. The council meant protection, trade agreements, status in the galaxy. Humans asked questions. How long do votes take? What are the requirements? Who decides emergency responses? The council explained their processes, their committees, their careful balance of power. Humans listened politely. "We need to discuss this among ourselves," the human representative had said. "We'll send our answer soon." 2 months later, the answer came. "Thank you for the generous offer. We must respectfully decline at this time. We hope to maintain friendly relations." The council was stunned. Species didn't refuse seats. Heron had assumed humans were simply naive, that they would regret their choice. Surely they would come back asking to join. They never did. Instead, something strange happened. Human ships started appearing in places council vessels rarely went. The unregulated zones, the independent colonies, the fringe territories that wanted no government oversight. Places where the council's jurisdiction was unclear, where votes and committees couldn't easily reach. At first, the council barely noticed. Then reports started coming in. Humans were trading with colonies the council had listed as under review for membership. Humans were building stations in unclaimed space. Humans were doing things without asking permission. "We should continue this session tomorrow," High Chancellor Vren announced. His voice carried authority earned over 40 years of service. "The fringe situation requires more analysis." More analysis meant more delays. Heron knew this pattern. By the time the council agreed on action, the crisis would resolve itself or get worse. Usually worse, the chamber emptied slowly. Diplomats stopped to chat, to make connections, to be seen talking to the right people. Politics never stopped, even between sessions. Heron noticed someone who never participated in these social games. Lily Grant sat in the observer section, not the delegate section. Humans sent observers to council sessions, but never asked to vote. Never asked for anything, really. Lily attended every session, took notes, and left quietly. Today, she didn't leave. She pulled out a small communication device and spoke quietly. Heron was close enough to hear. "It's happening again. Send the ships." Such a simple statement. No committees, no votes, no analysis. Just action. Heron found himself walking toward her. "Ambassador Grant." She looked up. "Council Member Heron." Another long session. 5 hours of debate. No resolution. "I noticed." He gestured at her communication device. "You called someone." "I did. May I ask who?" Lily stood and gathered her materials. She was tall for a human, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen many council sessions. "There's a relief ship 3 days from the fringe. I asked them to increase speed." "A relief ship? Whose?" "Ours. Well, not government ships. Independent human vessels. The Mercy's hand and her support fleet." Heron felt his feathers rise, a sign of agitation among his people. "The council hasn't authorized relief operations. The council hasn't authorized anything. People are dying now, council member. They can't wait for authorization." "But the jurisdiction issues—" "We don't have jurisdiction issues," Lily said gently. "We're not part of the council, remember? We can go where we're needed." She walked toward the exit. Heron followed, his mind racing. "Your ships operate in unregulated space without oversight. Without proper authority." Lily stopped and turned. Her expression wasn't angry or defensive, just calm. "Council member, with respect. Whose authority do dying people care about? Do you think a sick child in the fringe cares whether the council voted on sending medicine? There are procedures, and while you follow procedures, we save lives." She paused. "We're not trying to undermine the council. We're just not going to wait for it either. She left. Heron stood in the empty corridor, thinking about that empty seat in the chamber. 200 years of human independence. 200 years of humans going their own way. He pulled up data files on his personal device. Information about human activities in unregulated space wasn't classified. The council tracked it, filed reports, discussed it in committees. But nobody really looked at the whole picture. 312 independent human vessels operating across the fringe territories. Trade agreements with 47 colonies. Medical supply runs to 15 stations. Security patrols protecting 6 mining operations from pirates. All of it done without asking anyone's permission. The numbers kept growing. The Human Aid Cooperative. The Free Fleet. The Independent Trade Network. Organizations that didn't answer to any government, funded by donations and trade profits. Humans helping anyone who asked, no strings attached. No wonder the empty seat bothered him. Humans weren't waiting to be invited to galactic affairs. They were already there working, building, helping. They just weren't doing it the council way. Heron returned to his office and pulled up casualty reports from the fringe. Plague spreading on New Wells Station. Life support failing on 3 colonies. Pirate raids increasing. The council had been debating responses for 2 months. He checked shipping logs. The Mercy's Hand was a former military transport converted to relief work. Crew of 80. Medical facilities for 200 patients. Supply capacity for a 6-month mission. It would reach New Wells in 72 hours. The council's emergency response team, if approved by vote, couldn't launch for 2 weeks minimum. His terminal chimed. A message from High Chancellor Vren. Committee meeting tomorrow morning. Fringe territories situation. Prepare recommendations. Heron looked at his empty office. 40 years of service to the council. He believed in the institution, in the careful balance that kept 12 species working together. But Lily's words echoed in his mind. People can't wait for authorization. He began drafting his recommendations, knowing they would enter the slow machinery of council process. Somewhere in the darkness of space, human ships were already moving, already helping, already doing what the council was still debating. That empty seat wasn't looking so foolish anymore. New Wells had been a mining colony once. Profitable, busy, full of hope. Now the station's corridors smelled like disinfectant and desperation. The plague had started in the lower levels 3 weeks ago. Nobody knew where it came from. 23 people were dead. 70 more were sick. Pellin pressed his hand against the medical bay window. Inside, doctors worked with equipment that should have been replaced 5 years ago. His feathers drooped. As station administrator, he was supposed to keep people safe. He was failing. Administrator. A technician approached. There's a fleet approaching. Not council ships. Pellin's heart sank. Pirates, probably. Coming to strip what little the dying station had left. How many? 4 ships. Large ones. They're hailing us. What do they want? They're asking where to dock their medical teams, Pellin ran. He didn't care about dignity or proper administrative procedure. He ran to the command center, his clawed feet clicking on metal floors. The view screen showed 4 ships holding position outside docking range. They weren't military vessels. They weren't pirates either. This is New Wells Station, Pellin said, trying to steady his voice. Identify yourselves. A human woman appeared on screen. Dark skin, short hair, wearing a practical jumpsuit instead of a uniform. New Wells, this is Captain Diana Rush of the Mercy's Hand. We received word you're dealing with a plague situation. We're here to help. Help? Who sent you? Nobody sent us. You need medical assistance. We can provide it. May we dock? Pellin looked around the command center. His staff stared back at him. You're not council ships. No, we're independent. Does that matter? No, it doesn't matter. Dock at bays 4 and 5. We have 73 active patients. More suspected cases in isolation. Understood. We'll start unloading medical supplies immediately. Do you have space for a field hospital? Cargo bay 7. It's mostly empty. Perfect. We'll set up there. Mercy's Hand out. The screen went dark. Pellin's second in command, a young Avanth named Torin, looked confused. Sir, humans. I thought they didn't involve themselves in galactic affairs. Apparently, we were wrong. 40 minutes later, Pellin stood in Cargo Bay 7 and watched humans work. They moved like water finding its path, smooth and efficient. No wasted motion. No arguments about who should do what. They just worked. Diana Rush directed the operation with hand signals and short commands. Medical pods unfolded from compact containers. Diagnostic equipment powered up. Supply crates opened to reveal medicines, IV bags, sterilization units. Within 2 hours, a complete field hospital stood where empty space had been. "We should start bringing patients in," Diana said. She wasn't talking to Pellin. She was telling him. The difference mattered. "Our doctors will coordinate with yours," Pellin said. "Good, we brought specialists in infectious diseases. They'll want samples of the pathogen." Patients began arriving on stretchers. Pellin watched human doctors work alongside his own medical staff. No hesitation. No cultural confusion. They treated Avanth patients like they'd been doing it their whole lives. Diana found Pellin near the entrance. "Administrator, we need to talk about your life support systems. One of my engineers noticed problems. Life support is functioning badly. Your air recyclers are running at 60% efficiency. Your water purification system has contamination risks. Both could be contributing to the plague's spread." Pellin felt shame burn through him. "We've requested upgrades from the council. The application has been under review for 18 months. Diana pulled out a data pad. "We have engineers and parts. Not enough to replace everything, but enough to improve efficiency by 30%. May we start work?" "You're asking permission?" "It's your station." Yes, please. "Do whatever you can." Diana nodded and spoke into her communicator. "Rush to all teams. Station administrator has approved infrastructure support. Engineering teams deploy to life support sections, just like that. No forms, no committees, no votes. Just help given and accepted." Pellin found himself following Diana as she moved through the station. She stopped to talk with patients, to check on her crew, to examine problems and immediately call the right person to fix them. She reminded him of someone. It took him a moment to realize who. She reminded him of himself back when he first became administrator. Back when he still believed he could make a difference. Before endless bureaucracy and resource shortages wore him down. "Captain Rush," he said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course. Why are you here?" "You're not military. You're not government. You don't have any obligation to New Wells." Diana stopped walking. "Administrator, do you know what I did before this?" "No, I was a freighter pilot. Carried cargo from one station to another. Good money, boring work. Then I delivered supplies to a fringe colony after a meteor strike. Saw people digging through rubble with their bare hands because they had no equipment. Saw children go hungry because the council's relief shipment was delayed by jurisdiction debates." She looked around the corridor. "I realized I could keep making money moving products, or I could move things that actually mattered. So I bought my ship outright, converted her to relief work, and started the Human Aid Cooperative. We're funded by donations and volunteer crews. Nobody orders us where to go. We go where we're needed. Just because you're needed, why else would we go?" Pellin had no answer. In his world, help came with conditions. Trade agreements, political alignments, membership requirements. The council's assistants always had strings attached. These humans brought medicine and asked nothing in return. 3 days passed. The plague's spread slowed, then stopped. Human doctors identified the pathogen and synthesized a treatment. Not a cure yet, but enough to keep people alive while their bodies fought the infection. Death stopped visiting the medical bay. Pellin toured the station with Diana. Everywhere he looked, he saw improvements. Cleaner air, better water, repaired equipment. Human engineers had worked around the clock, fixing years of neglect in 3 days. "We'll leave a supply of medicine," Diana said. "Enough for 2 months. After that, you should be clear of the plague. How much do we owe you?" Diana smiled. "Nothing. Though if you want to donate to the cooperative's fund, we wouldn't refuse. We run on volunteer contributions." "Nothing? You spent resources, time, risked your crews. We helped people who needed help. That's not a transaction, Administrator. That's just being decent." They reached the docking bay. Human crews were loading equipment back onto their ships. The field hospital was already being disassembled. In another day, it would be like they'd never been there, except for the 73 people who weren't dead. "Captain, please wait." Pellin pulled out his personal communicator. "I'm sending you contact information for 15 other fringe colonies. They have problems. Medical issues, equipment failures, security concerns. Nothing as urgent as our situation, but they need help." Diana accepted the data. "We'll add them to our route." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Pellin watched the human ships undock and turn toward deep space. Torin joined him at the window. Sir, should we report this to the council? Report what? That humans saved our station while the council debated jurisdiction? It might be relevant information. Pellin thought about his pending upgrade request, sitting in some council committee for 18 months. He thought about Diana and her crew, who showed up without being asked and helped without wanting anything. Send a message to those 15 colonies, he said. Tell them if they need help. Contact the Human Aid Cooperative directly. Don't wait for the council. Sir, that's practical. The council can debate. We need to survive. On the Mercy's hand, Diana reviewed the new list of colonies. 15 more stops. Probably 6 months of work. Her crew wouldn't complain. They signed up for this. Her first officer, an older man named Robert, brought her a hot meal. Word spreading. We're getting requests from colonies we've never heard of. How many? 20 more just today. Diana ate in silence, thinking. The council had thousands of ships and unlimited resources. The Human Aid Cooperative had 4 ships and whatever donations they could gather. But they had something the council didn't have. They had the freedom to simply help. Plot a course to the nearest colony on the list, she said. Let's keep moving. The Mercy's hand turned and accelerated. Behind them, New Wells Station glowed with renewed life. Ahead of them, more people waited. More problems that needed solving. More chances to prove that authority and approval weren't requirements for doing good, just the willingness to try. The data file landed on Heron's desk like a physical weight. 23 pages of reports about human operations in the fringe territories. Operations that were growing, expanding, becoming impossible to ignore. He'd requested the information himself. Now he wished he hadn't. High Chancellor Vren called an emergency session. The council chamber filled quickly. When the council moved fast, something was seriously wrong, or someone was seriously angry. Vren was both. We have a situation, he began, his scaled face tight with controlled fury. Humans are operating throughout unregulated space without authorization. They're providing aid, establishing trade relationships, and defending colonies, all without council oversight. Orcs, the trade representative, raised a clawed hand. Isn't that a positive development? The fringe colonies are receiving help they desperately need. Without proper procedure, Vren said. Without jurisdiction agreements. Without accountability. Heron watched the debate unfold. Some council members saw human aid work as helpful. Others saw it as threatening. The second group was louder. They're undermining our authority, said Council Member Breathen, a broad-shouldered being from a warrior culture. If colonies can get help from humans, why would they seek council membership? Perhaps because we weren't helping them, Orcs countered. We were following proper procedures, which take months, sometimes years. People don't have that time. Vren raised his hand for silence. We need facts. Ambassador Grant, please stand. Lily rose from the observer section, calm, professional, showing no stress despite dozens of eyes turning toward her. Ambassador, how many human ships are currently operating in unregulated space? 312 at last count. The chamber erupted. 300 ships. That wasn't a relief operation. That was a fleet. Vren waited for quiet. What is their purpose? Various purposes. Medical relief, trade, security patrols, infrastructure repair, educational support. Whatever communities need. Under whose authority? Their own. They're independent vessels, mostly volunteers. The Human Aid Cooperative coordinates relief work. The Free Fleet handles security. The Trade Network manages commerce. All without government oversight? Human government doesn't operate that way. These are private organizations. Citizens helping other citizens. Breathen leaned forward. Your people are building an empire in the fringe. Don't pretend otherwise. Lily's expression didn't change. Council member, we're not building an empire. We're building relationships. There's a difference. You're creating dependencies, making colonies rely on human aid instead of proper council channels. We're offering help to anyone who asks. We're not demanding anything in return. If that creates relationships, good. The galaxy needs more cooperation, not less. Heron found himself speaking without planning to. How many lives have human operations saved? The chamber went quiet. Lily looked directly at him. We don't keep those statistics for publicity purposes, but our best estimate over the past 10 years is around 2 million. 2 million, the number hung in the air like smoke. Vren recovered first. The council appreciates humanitarian efforts. However, we cannot allow unregulated operations to continue without oversight. We must maintain order. Order for whom? Orcs asked quietly. Wren ignored her. Ambassador Grant, humanity must submit to council jurisdiction in the fringe territories or face consequences. What consequences? Economic sanctions, trade restrictions, denial of docking rights at council stations. Lily didn't look surprised, didn't look worried. I'll communicate your position to my government. Is there anything else? That will be all. She left. The chamber erupted again, arguments flying across the space like weapons. Heron watched Wren's face. The High Chancellor had expected Lily to negotiate, to defend, to show concern. Her calm acceptance clearly unsettled him. The vote came quickly. Sanctions against human operations. 12 species, 8 voted yes, 4 abstained, including Orcs. None voted no, but Heron voted yes. He believed in the council, in proper procedure, and the authority that kept the galaxy functioning. But his hand felt heavy when he raised it. The sanctions took effect immediately. No council member could trade with independent human operations. All human ships must be denied docking at council facilities. Economic pressure to force compliance. 3 weeks later, Heron reviewed the results. They weren't what anyone expected. The fringe colonies didn't abandon humans. They rallied around them. 17 independent stations formally declared they would continue trading with human ships regardless of council sanctions. 9 colonies publicly thanked humans for years of support and announced they would never seek council membership. Worse, from the council's perspective, some member species were quietly ignoring the sanctions. Trade ships still stopped at human stations. Medical supplies still flowed through human networks. The council's economic pressure was leaking like a damaged hull. Then the reports started coming in. The planet Fen, a council trade world, was suffering economic collapse. Fen merchants had built their entire economy around trading with fringe colonies. Human ships had been the primary transport network. When sanctions stopped human ships from using council docking facilities, the entire trade route collapsed. Thousands of Fen workers were unemployed. Warehouses sat full of unsold goods. The Fen delegates sent increasingly desperate messages to Wren, begging for exemptions. Heron read the reports in his office late at night. The sanctions were hurting council worlds more than they were hurting humans. The humans just adapted, built new routes, traded with independent stations. The council was punishing itself. His terminal chimed. A message from his homeworld's news network. He opened it reluctantly. Human relief ships were continuing their operations despite sanctions. In fact, they were expanding. More volunteers were signing up. More donations were flooding in. Humans across the galaxy, hearing that their aid workers were being blocked, were responding by supporting them even more. The report showed footage of Diana Rush's Mercy's Hand delivering supplies to a colony that had been cut off from council trade routes because of the sanctions. The colonists cheered when the human ships arrived. "We don't need the council," one colonist said to the camera. "We have friends who actually help us." Heron turned off the report. He'd voted for these sanctions, believing they would bring humans back to the negotiating table. Instead, they were driving colonies away from the council entirely. His communicator buzzed. Private message from Orcs. Emergency meeting. Fen homeworld. Their economy is collapsing. They're requesting emergency council intervention. Another committee meeting. More debates about jurisdiction and procedure. Meanwhile, Fen people were losing their businesses. Heron made a decision that would have seemed impossible a month ago. He sent a private message to Lily Grant. "Ambassador, the Fen world is suffering because of our sanctions. Can your trade network help?" The response came quickly. "We're aware of the situation. If Fen merchants want to work with us, we're willing. Sanctions don't stop us from helping people in need. Even though we're trying to force you to submit to our authority, council member, we don't hold grudges against people for their government's decisions. If Fen needs help, we'll help. That's what we do." Heron sat back in his chair. These humans were either incredibly principled or incredibly foolish. He was starting to suspect it was the former. The Fen delegate, a dignified being named Orin, arrived at the council station 3 days later. He looked exhausted. Heron met him privately before the emergency session. "The situation is desperate," Orin said. "Our economy was built on fringe trade. Without it, we're collapsing. 50,000 unemployed in 3 weeks. Our government is facing crisis. The council will provide aid." After how many committee meetings? How many votes? My people are suffering now. Heron hesitated. There may be another option. Humans have offered to help. Oren looked shocked. But the sanctions, they don't seem to care about sanctions when people need help. Would the council allow it? I don't know, but I think you should consider it. That night, Oren sent a private message to the Human Trade Network. Within 48 hours, human merchant ships were docking at Fen facilities picking up goods, distributing them through independent trade routes. The Fen economy began to stabilize. The council said nothing publicly, but everyone noticed. Heron walked through the station's observation deck looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, 300 human ships were moving through space, helping, building, trading, defending. Not because anyone told them to, because they chose to. That empty seat in the council chamber was starting to look less like stubbornness and more like wisdom. Maybe humans understood something the rest of the galaxy hadn't learned yet. Maybe authority wasn't something you demanded. Maybe it was something you earned by doing the right thing. Even when nobody was watching, especially when nobody was watching. The ground stopped moving, but the damage was already done. High Chancellor Vren climbed out of the collapsed council building basement where he'd taken shelter. Above him, his world's capital city was ruins and smoke. The earthquake had struck during the day cycle. Magnitude 8.4. Buildings fell. Transit systems collapsed. Thousands of people were buried under stone and metal, maybe tens of thousands. Nobody knew yet. Vren's security detail found him within minutes. Chancellor, we need to evacuate you to orbit. No, coordinate rescue operations. Get emergency teams to the worst zones. Sir, the emergency response system is overwhelmed. The earthquake damaged our primary communications hub. We can't reach half the affected districts. Vren felt ice in his chest. The Saurid had been cutting emergency services budgets for years, redirecting funds to more visible projects. Infrastructure wasn't glamorous. Nobody noticed when things worked correctly. Now they noticed when things failed catastrophically. Contact the council. Request emergency assistance. Already done, sir. They're convening an emergency session to discuss response protocols. Discussion? We need ships and rescue workers, not discussions. Council procedure requires. I know what procedure requires. I wrote half those procedures. Vren walked through the destroyed streets. His people pulled at rubble with their bare hands. Rescue equipment was stuck in collapsed tunnels. Medical facilities were overflowing. The government's disaster response was 20 years out of date and underfunded. This was his fault. He'd been High Chancellor for 40 years. He'd prioritized council politics over infrastructure investment. He'd believed proper procedure was more important than preparation. Now his people were paying for his choices. A junior aide approached, breathing hard. Chancellor, there's a fleet entering orbit. They're hailing us. The council response team already? No, sir, they're human ships. Vren stopped walking. Humans. 4 vessels. They're requesting permission to land emergency response teams and equipment. They say they can be on the ground in 30 minutes. The sanctions. The humans were still under sanctions. Saurid vessels were explicitly forbidden from accepting human aid. Vren had voted for those sanctions himself. Tell them. Vren looked at the rubble around him, at his people digging desperately for survivors, at the smoke rising from 100 different fires. Tell them permission granted. Land wherever they can, the aide hesitated. Sir, the sanctions, right now I don't care about sanctions. People are dying. If humans can help, let them help. 32 minutes later, human rescue workers were pulling people from collapsed buildings. They brought equipment the Saurid emergency services didn't have. Ground-penetrating sensors to find survivors, hydraulic lifters to move debris safely, medical pods that could stabilize patients in the field. Vren watched them work. They moved with practiced efficiency, like they'd done this 100 times before. Later, he would learn they had. Humans responded to disasters across the fringe regularly. They'd developed specialized equipment and training specifically for emergency rescue. Diana Rush directed operations from a mobile command center. She was covered in dust but didn't seem to notice. Vren approached her position. Captain Rush, she turned. Hi, Chancellor. We're setting up triage centers in 3 locations. Do you have updated casualty estimates? Not yet. Communications are still down in many districts. We brought portable comm arrays. My technical team can have basic networks running in 2 hours. Just like that. No committees, no approval processes. Just solutions offered and implemented. Captain, why are you here? Diana looked at him like the question made no sense. There was an earthquake. People need help. Your ships are under council sanctions. My government voted to restrict your operations. I know. Yet you came anyway. Diana gestured at the destroyed city. Chancellor, when someone needs help, we don't check their voting record first. We just help. A call came over her radio. Building collapse in Sector 7. Possible survivors trapped. Diana immediately redirected 2 rescue teams. Vren watched her work for 3 hours. She never stopped moving. Never stopped solving problems. When rescue teams found survivors, she was there organizing medical care. When equipment failed, she was there coordinating backups. When her crews needed rest, she made sure they got it while keeping operations running. She reminded him of someone. It took him hours to realize who. She reminded him of the person he'd been 40 years ago when he first joined the council. When he believed government could make people's lives better. Before he got lost in procedure and politics and forgot why any of it mattered. Night fell. Emergency lights illuminated the rescue sites. Human crews worked alongside SARD emergency services. The cultural differences didn't matter. The language barriers didn't matter. They were all just trying to save lives. A young Saurid child was pulled from rubble in Sector 12. She'd been trapped for 8 hours. Dehydrated, injured, but alive. The human medic who stabilized her was crying. Vren saw the tears. Captain Rush, he said when she passed by. Your people are crying. Are they trained for this? Diana stopped. They're trained. But training doesn't make you stop caring. That medic has probably saved 200 lives in her career. She still cries every time. That's what makes her good at her job. In the council, we train diplomats to maintain emotional distance. I know. I've met your diplomats. The words hung between them. Not an insult. Just an observation. Vren made a decision. Captain, walk with me. They moved away from the immediate rescue operations. Vren led her to a collapsed transit station. 30 people had died here, maybe more still buried. This station was on the maintenance schedule for upgrades 5 years ago, Vren said. The council delayed it. Jurisdiction debates about infrastructure funding. Committee reviews about whether it was truly critical. By the time we approved funding, other priorities had emerged. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was our choice, my choice. I prioritized procedure over people. Diana said nothing, just listened. 70 years ago, I joined the council because I believed in careful governance, in balanced decision-making, in making sure all voices were heard before taking action. Vren looked at the ruins around him. I forgot that while all voices are being heard, people are waiting, suffering, dying. You were trying to be fair. Fair to whom? Fair to the process. Not fair to the people the process was supposed to serve. Diana pulled out a water container and offered it to him. He drank. It was warm but clean. Chancellor, can I tell you something humans learned a long time ago? Please. Government is important. Rules are important. But they're tools, not goals. The moment you start serving the system instead of using the system to serve people, you've got it backwards. That sounds like chaos. It sounds like that to someone who's spent 40 years in careful systems. But look around. Does careful procedure look like it's working right now? Vren couldn't answer that. 3 days later, the immediate crisis was stabilizing. Human rescue teams had pulled 473 survivors from rubble. Their mobile hospitals were treating thousands. Their engineers were restoring power and communications faster than Saurid emergency services could. Heron arrived from the council station. He found Vren in the temporary government center watching status reports. Chancellor, the council is concerned about the human presence here. They're helping. They're violating sanctions. Then I'm violating sanctions too. I authorized their assistance. Heron sat down. The council wants to know when human operations will cease, when the emergency is over, when my people are safe, when the city is rebuilt, however long that takes. The other council members can issue all the sanctions they want. Right now I care more about human rescue workers than I care about council politics. Heron looked shocked. Vren was shocked too. A month ago he would never have said those words. A month ago he believed council authority was the foundation of galactic stability. Maybe it was, but maybe humanity had found something better. Not authority imposed from above. Partnership built from mutual respect. Help given because it was needed, not because regulations required it, Heron. Vren said quietly. When was the last time the council actually helped someone? We provide aid regularly. After how many votes? How many committee meetings? How many jurisdiction debates? When was the last time we just helped someone because they needed it? Heron had no answer. Diana found Vren later that evening. Chancellor, we're going to start rotating crews in 2 days. Keep a permanent support presence until reconstruction is complete. If that's acceptable, how long will that take? 6 months, maybe 8. We'll bring in construction specialists and equipment. Pro bono work. You're going to rebuild our capital? We're going to help you rebuild it. Your people will do most of the work. We'll provide support, resources, expertise, whatever you need. Vren felt something crack inside him. 40 years of careful control. 40 years of maintaining proper distance. It all fell away. Why? Diana smiled. It was tired but genuine. Because you're people. That's reason enough. Vren stood in what used to be his office. The earthquake had destroyed the council building, but workers had salvaged his desk. It sat among the rubble like a monument to priorities he no longer understood. 40 years of reports. 40 years of careful votes. 40 years of procedure. What had it built? A government so tangled in its own rules that it couldn't respond when its people needed help. A human construction worker approached. Young man, covered in dust. Excuse me, Chancellor. We're about to demolish this section. Did you need to get anything? Vren looked at his desk. At the files and documents that had seemed so important last week. No, tear it all down. The worker nodded and moved on. No ceremony. No long speeches. Just acknowledgement and action. Diana found him an hour later. She was directing crane operations, moving debris that weighed more than most vehicles. Chancellor, do you have a moment? They walked to the edge of the disaster zone. Recovery operations continued in every direction. Human crews worked alongside Saurid volunteers. The partnership had become natural over the past week. Nobody thought about species anymore. Just people helping people. I want to understand something, Vren said. Your human aid cooperative. Where does funding come from? Donations mostly. Some members pay small monthly contributions. Others give what they can when they can. We also run a trade network that generates profit. Half goes to operational costs, half to aid work. No government funding? None. We don't want to be controlled by any government, including our own. But that means you're limited by voluntary contributions. Diana smiled. You'd think so. But people are generous when they see their money actually helping. Last year we raised enough to operate 8 relief ships. This year we're expanding to 12. How many people donate? About 4 million humans, plus members of other species. We've got Fen merchants, Avanth volunteers, even some Saurid contributors now. 4 million individuals choosing to help. No laws forcing them. No committees managing them. Just people who saw suffering and decided to do something about it. Your approach seems inefficient, Vren said. No central planning. No coordinated strategy. Maybe. But we don't get stuck in planning paralysis either. When someone needs help, we go. No votes required. A rescue team called Diana over. Structural integrity questions on a partially collapsed building. She excused herself and went to work. Always working. Never stopping. Vren watched her coordinate with Saurid engineers. She didn't order them. She didn't pull rank. She asked questions, offered suggestions, listened to their expertise. The engineers responded to her respect with respect of their own. That night, Vren reviewed reports in his temporary quarters. The council wanted him back at the station. Emergency sessions about human presence on his world. Debates about sanctions enforcement. Procedure and protocol calling him back to the chamber. He ignored them all. Instead, he walked through the reconstruction zones. Human portable lights illuminated work areas. Crews operated through the night. Not because anyone forced them. Because there was work to do and people were still suffering. A Saurid family was being pulled from a collapsed residential tower. They'd been trapped for 6 days. Everyone thought they were dead. A human search team heard sounds and kept digging. 12 hours of careful work. 3 people saved. Vren watched the family reunite. Watched the human rescue worker who'd found them receive thanks with embarrassed humility. She'd saved 3 lives and acted like it was just part of her job. Because it was. He found Diana near the medical tents. She was eating a ration bar and reviewing structural reports on a data pad. Captain, may I ask you a personal question? Sure. Why did you become a relief worker? You said you were a freighter pilot. That must have paid better. Diana set down her data pad. It did. But money doesn't help you sleep at night when you know people are dying and you could have helped them. Many people ignore suffering they could prevent. I know. I used to be one of them. Then I delivered supplies to a disaster zone once, saw what it meant to people, realized I could do more with my ship than move products. She gestured at the work around them. This matters. Profit doesn't. The council operates differently. We believe careful procedure protects against mistakes. Does it? Because from where I'm standing, your careful procedure got a lot of people killed. The words should have stung. They didn't. They were true. I've been thinking about that, Vren said. About why the council exists, what it's supposed to accomplish, and I realized I forgot. Somewhere in 40 years of meetings and votes and committee work, I forgot we're supposed to serve people, not serve the institution. Diana nodded slowly. That happens. Institutions get comfortable, start existing for their own sake. Human governments do it too. How do humans prevent that? We don't always. But having independent organizations helps. When government fails, volunteers step in. Keeps everyone honest. Vren thought about that. About 300 human ships operating without government control. About the Human Aid Cooperative funded by voluntary donations. About the freedom to help without asking permission. Your system is chaos, he said. Maybe. But it's chaos that saves lives. The next day, Heron arrived with an official council delegation. They wanted answers. Why was Vren allowing unauthorized human presence? When would sanctions be enforced? Why wasn't he attending council sessions? Vren met them in a tent that served as temporary government headquarters. No grand chambers. No formal protocols. Just practical space for necessary work. Gentlemen, he began, I've made some decisions. The delegation looked nervous. Heron especially. He'd known Vren for 30 years. Could probably sense something fundamental had changed. First, I'm recommending the council immediately lift sanctions on human relief operations. They're counterproductive and harmful. Shock rippled through the delegation. Second, I'm proposing radical reform of council emergency response procedures. Committee approval should be bypassed in life-threatening situations. Response teams should have authority to deploy immediately. Chancellor, one delegate said, that would eliminate oversight. It would eliminate delays that cost lives. We can investigate actions after the fact. We can't wait days for votes when people are dying. The council operates on consensus. The council operates on procedures written by people who never had to dig through rubble looking for survivors. I've been doing that for a week. It changes your perspective. Heron spoke carefully. Chancellor, these reforms would fundamentally alter council structure. Good. The structure is broken. I helped build it. I know exactly how broken it is. You're one of the council's strongest advocates for careful procedure. I was. Then an earthquake killed my people because our careful procedures prevented us from maintaining basic infrastructure. Then I watched humans save lives because they're not trapped by procedures. Vren stood. I'm done serving the system, Heron. It's time the system served people. The delegation left looking disturbed. Heron stayed behind. You're risking your position, he said. Quietly, I don't care about my position. The other council members won't accept these changes easily. Then they'll have to explain why they prefer procedure over people's lives. Heron studied him. The humans changed your mind. The humans showed me what I forgot. Government isn't supposed to be careful. It's supposed to be effective. Those aren't always the same thing. Exactly. Diana's crews worked for 6 weeks on Vren's world. They pulled out 200 more survivors, treated thousands of injured, restored power, water, communications, stabilized damaged buildings and demolished ones beyond saving. They worked alongside Sorid volunteers who learned human construction techniques, shared equipment and expertise, built friendships across species boundaries. When the immediate crisis ended, Diana prepared to leave. Vren met her at her ship. Captain, I want to thank you for everything. Just doing our job, Chancellor. You saved my world. That's more than a job, Diana smiled. We helped. Your people saved your world. We just gave them tools. Vren had prepared a speech. Formal words of gratitude. He discarded them all. Why did humanity refuse the council seat? He asked. The real reason? Diana thought for a moment. Because joining meant following your rules. Meant waiting for votes and committee approvals. Meant asking permission to help people. She gestured at the reconstruction around them. We didn't want to wait. We didn't want to ask. We wanted to build something that worked. You succeeded. So can the council, if it remembers what it's for. Diana boarded her ship. Vren watched it lift off and disappear into the sky. Around him, his world was healing, slowly, painfully, but healing. He'd spent 40 years believing proper procedure was the foundation of civilization. Now he understood. Civilization wasn't built on procedure. It was built on people caring about other people. Everything else was just details. Heron found him still standing there an hour later. The council wants you back for emergency sessions. They're upset about your reform proposals. Let them be upset. Friend, they might remove you as High Chancellor. Then they'll remove me. But I'm not backing down. Not this time. Heron looked at his old friend. You've changed. No, I remembered who I used to be. Before politics and procedure buried that person. What happens now? Now I go back to the council and fight for reforms. I tell them what I learned. That authority without compassion is tyranny. That procedure without purpose is theater. That we forgot we're supposed to serve people, not serve ourselves. They won't like hearing that. I know, but someone needs to say it. Above them, stars began appearing in the evening sky. Somewhere out there, 300 human ships were moving through space, helping, building, saving lives without waiting for permission. They'd shown the galaxy a better way. Now someone had to have the courage to follow. 6 months passed like water through fingers. The council chamber looked the same. Same seats, same lighting, same careful arrangement of power. But something fundamental had shifted in the space between. Heron noticed the changes immediately. Orcs had stopped waiting for proper turn-taking in debates. She simply spoke when she had something important to say. Breathen had started proposing solutions instead of just criticizing problems. Small shifts, meaningful ones. The observation section had changed too. It was crowded now. Representatives from 30 independent fringe colonies occupied seats never used before. They couldn't vote, but they were present, watching, making their interests known just by being there. Lily Grant sat among them. Same calm expression, same professional distance. But her presence felt different now. Not like an outsider. Like someone who'd been proven right and was too polite to mention it. High Chancellor Vren called the special session to order. The chamber quieted slowly. Everyone knew what this session was about. The reforms, the fundamental restructuring of how the council operated. 6 months ago, Vren had proposed radical changes. The other council members had been furious, threatened to remove him, called emergency votes to block his proposals. Then the reports started coming in. Council member worlds that had quietly accepted human help during the sanctions. They'd seen results. Faster response times, better outcomes. No political strings attached. They started asking questions. Why couldn't the council operate that way? The Fen delegate had been particularly vocal. Their economy had collapsed under sanctions, then recovered with human help. Oren stood during preliminary debates and said something that changed the conversation. The humans saved our world while we were trying to punish them. That tells you everything you need to know about whose system works better. Vren began the session. We're here to vote on Council Reform Proposal 74. Emergency Response Restructuring. The proposal has been circulated. Discussion is open, Breathen spoke first. That was new. He used to wait until others had spoken, then criticize. Now he led. I've reviewed the Saurid earthquake response data. Human teams deployed in under an hour. Council protocols would have required minimum 2 days for preliminary approvals. Over 400 lives were saved in that first day. He paused. I support the reforms. Shock rippled through the chamber. Breathen supporting structural change was like gravity reversing. Orcs spoke next. The trade disruption caused by our sanctions cost member worlds an estimated $4 billion in commerce. The humans we were trying to pressure barely noticed. They simply adapted. She looked around the chamber. We hurt ourselves trying to maintain authority. The reforms would prevent that mistake. One by one, council members spoke. Some supported reforms. Some had reservations. But nobody defended the old system without qualification. The earthquake had broken something in the chamber's collective certainty. The vote came. 12 council members. 9 voted yes. 2 voted no. 1 abstained. The reforms passed. Heron felt something unclench in his chest. The council would change. Slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Emergency response teams could now deploy without committee approval. Member worlds could partner directly with independent organizations. The elaborate procedure that had paralyzed the Council for decades was being stripped away. Not all of it. Some procedure was necessary, but the reforms removed the barriers that had prevented action when action mattered. Vren looked satisfied but not triumphant. The reforms will be implemented over the next 6 months. Emergency response restructuring begins immediately. Then he did something unexpected. I have one additional item for this session. Earth's council seat remains empty. I propose we formally invite humanity to join. Again. The chamber went completely silent. This time, Vren continued, without conditions, without requirements for military integration or technology sharing. We simply offer partnership and respect. Heron watched Lily. She showed no reaction. She'd known this was coming. Ambassador Grant, Vren said, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally invite humanity to accept full council membership. We would be honored by your presence. Everyone waited. Lily stood slowly, walked from the observer section to the chamber floor, stood where council members gave their votes in testimony. It was as close as she'd ever come to the empty Earth seat. High Chancellor Council members, I'm grateful for this invitation. It's offered in genuine respect. I believe that completely. Someone was going to say, but Heron could hear it coming. But humanity must respectfully decline. The chamber erupted. Half the members looked shocked. The other half looked like they'd expected it. Heron realized he'd expected it too. Humans had spent 200 years building something different. They weren't going to abandon it for a seat at a table, no matter how politely offered. Vren raised his hand for silence. May I ask why? Lily smiled. Not mockingly. Kindly. Because we found a better path for ourselves. The Council serves an important purpose. 12 species working together, building consensus, managing conflicts. That matters, but it's not our path. We built something that works for us. The Human Aid Cooperative, the Free Fleet, the Independent Trade Network, organizations that help without asking permission, that operate on voluntary cooperation instead of authority. You're rejecting partnership with the Council? No, we're choosing a different kind of partnership. One where we remain independent but friendly, where we work together when it makes sense, where we help each other without one side controlling the other. Orcs leaned forward. You're saying you'll cooperate without joining? Exactly. We'll trade with Council worlds. We'll coordinate relief efforts. We'll share information. We'll do everything partners do. We just won't submit to Council authority. That's not how galactic governance works, Breathen said. But he didn't sound angry. He sounded curious. Maybe it should be, Lily said. Maybe the galaxy needs both. Formal institutions like the Council for member species. Independent organizations like ours for those who prefer that approach. Maybe diversity in governance is strength, not weakness. Vren studied her. You're suggesting we're not competitors. We're complementary. Yes, the Council does some things well. Long-term planning, conflict resolution, coordinated policy. Humans do other things well. Rapid response, flexible adaptation, voluntary cooperation. Why force one model on everyone? Because we need unified authority to maintain order. Do you? Or do you need enough cooperation to prevent chaos? Those aren't the same thing. The chamber fell silent again. This time it wasn't shock. It was thought. Heron found himself speaking. Ambassador, what happens to the empty seat? It stays empty. It's not a rejection anymore. It's a reminder. Of what? That authority must be earned. That the most powerful nations aren't always the ones in government chambers. That doing good doesn't require permission. Lily looked around the chamber. That seat staying empty helped reform the Council. It reminded you that people have alternatives. That you must serve them or they'll find someone who will. Vren smiled sadly. You're using your independence to keep us honest. We're living our values. If that keeps you honest, good. No vote was taken. No formal resolution. The invitation had been offered and declined. Again. This time everyone understood what it meant. Lily returned to the observer section. The session continued with normal business. Trade agreements. Boundary disputes. The daily work of maintaining galactic civilization. But something had changed. The Council members glanced at the independent colony representatives. At the observers. At the reminder that they served at the pleasure of those they governed. Not the other way around. After the session, Heron found Lily in the station corridor. Ambassador, I need to understand something. What's that? You've built an impressive network. Hundreds of ships, millions of supporters, real influence. Why not formalize it? Create a human government to coordinate it all? Lily thought about that. Because government isn't the answer to every problem. Sometimes the answer is people choosing to help other people. No laws required, no bureaucracy needed, just individuals deciding to be decent. That sounds idealistic. It is idealistic. It's also working. 4 million humans donate to relief operations voluntarily. Thousands volunteer their time. Hundreds captainships. Not because anyone forces them, because they want to help. What if they stop wanting to? Then we'll adapt. But I don't think they will. People are generous when they see their efforts matter. When they're not tangled in bureaucracy, when they can just help and see results. Heron walked with her to the docking bay. I misjudged humanity. I thought refusing the council seat was arrogance. And now? Now I think it was wisdom. You knew joining would change you, make you like us. You chose to stay different. We chose to stay free. There's a difference. Lily's transport was waiting. She boarded, then paused at the entrance. Councilmember Heron, thank you. For what? For being willing to change your mind. That's harder than maintaining consistency. The earthquake changed my mind. And humans pulling people from rubble while the council debated jurisdiction. That's why we do it. Not to prove anything. Just to help. But if it proves something along the way, that's fine too. Her transport left. Heron stood in the docking bay, thinking about empty seats and the choices they represented. Across the galaxy, human ships moved through darkness. The Mercy's hand responded to a medical emergency on a mining station. The Free Fleet patrolled trade routes, protecting merchants from pirates. Construction crews rebuilt infrastructure on the Saurid homeworld. Teachers shared educational resources with colonies that couldn't afford schools. All of it done without government coordination. Without central planning. Just people helping people because they could and it mattered. The council continued its work. Reformed now, more efficient, more responsive. But still careful. Still measured. Still building consensus across 12 different species with different needs. Both systems coexisted. Both served purposes. Neither was perfect. Both were necessary. 2 weeks later, a young Avanth child visited the council station on a school trip. She stood in the observation deck with her class, looking at the Earth through the viewport. Teacher, why is Earth's seat empty? The teacher, an older Avanth who remembered first contact, considered the question. Because humans chose a different path. Are they part of the galaxy? Very much so. More than most council members in some ways. Then why not join? Because being part of something doesn't always mean sitting at the formal table. Sometimes it means working alongside, helping wherever needed, building partnerships without demanding authority. The child thought about this. That seems smarter. Why do you say that? Because if you're at the table, you have to follow table rules. If you're helping from outside, you can help however works best. The teacher smiled. Young wisdom. Yes, that's exactly right. The child looked at Earth, small and blue in the distance. I think humans are very smart. So do I. It just took us a long time to realize it. On Earth, in a small office in a city by the sea, a woman reviewed donation reports. 4.2 million contributors this month. Up 3% from last month. The Human Aid Cooperative could fund 2 more relief ships next year. Her terminal chimed. Emergency distress call. Colony in the Outer Rim. Reactor failure. Power failing. 3,000 people at risk. She pulled up deployment charts. The Mercy's hand was closest. 4 days travel at maximum speed. She opened a channel. Diana, we have a situation. Send coordinates. We're already turning. No committees. No votes, no waiting. Just people helping people because that's what decent beings did. The woman closed the channel and looked at the picture on her wall. The old Apollo missions. Humans reaching for space. Reaching beyond what they knew. Taking risks to explore and discover and grow. That same spirit lived in every human ship moving through the galaxy. Not conquering. Not claiming. Just helping. Building. Partnering. That empty council seat represented the best of humanity. Not isolation. Not arrogance, freedom. The freedom to help without asking permission. The freedom to build without seeking approval. The freedom to prove that authority came from service, not from titles. Earth's seat would stay empty. Not because humans rejected the galaxy, because they'd found a better way to be part of it, and the galaxy was slowly learning that sometimes the strongest influence came from those who never demanded power, who simply did the work, earned respect, and let their actions speak louder than any vote ever could.